Good evening. I'm David Watts Jr., and this is a public forum on the Public Safety Building Project. With me this evening to take questions from citizens is Chief Richard Smith from the Wakefield Police Department, Chief Michael Sullivan from the Fire Department, and Joe Bertrand, who's on both the Finance Committee and the Permanent Building Committee. Tonight is going to be very simple. This is in preparation for the special election that has been called for Tuesday, June 26th. A quick reminder, this will be the first election that's at the Galvin for everyone. There are no precincts anymore to go to. The precinct markers will be in, right now, the cafeteria. It's a single question referendum, and essentially it's the same wording as for town meeting for this project. A couple of rules tonight. Only persons present in Studio A may ask a question or make a statement. Although this program is being viewed live on WCAT's Facebook page, questions submitted via Facebook cannot be relayed to the station, to the studio. Each speaker must begin by identifying himself or herself by name. There's a 2-minute maximum for each speaker. And please try to avoid any personal references or anything of that kind. So with that, do we have a first question or statement?
Yeah, that was going to be at the end, but that's fine. Robert Mitchell, 6 Spalding Street. Question for Chief Sullivan. I understand currently you're in your current position, probably will be for the construction of this effort if it occurs.
Yes.
And you're a taxpayer in Wakefield, also contributing to the funding of the town. If state or federal requirements change in the future, or if the increasing density of development in Wakefield continues, is it possible the fire department may be required to add additional equipment in the near future?
I would say in the near future, no, not unless something really drastically changes with the town's population. You know, if it increased by 10 or 20,000 people or something like that, then possibly, depending upon like what section of town the development was occurring in.
Okay. If there was a requirement to add, say, an additional service truck or something, would the current facility handle that?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. You have an additional bay. You have a bay for one more.
Yeah,
truck?
we have room for another engine. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I looked at the feasibility study, and there's a number of lines in there that talk about funding of a swing space. They actually talk to it specifically, and they list the dollar amount is to be determined. And they actually listed the police would probably need a 7,000 square foot temporary space during a phase of the construction. I understand the beginning pour on the front, probably not, but after that. So I'm confused about the architects clearly speak to the very possible requirement of a swing facility needed. It was certainly needed in '04 when we only did a $2 million move some walls around. This is an $8 million rebuild. Have any of you ever been in a public building of any size, or similar size, that was in the middle of an $8 million renovation, and you actually walked in there as a citizen requiring services? I'm just concerned a little bit about even a citizen entering an $8 million construction effort. If anyone's done home construction, they know what just a $5,000 or $10,000 job is like to live in. So I'm concerned about how that would impact the staff, the police staff in there, and also the public entering in and out for standard paperwork needs, or maybe in the middle of a crisis. So I'm not seeing that. Yeah, so,
I'll answer that.
certainly.
First of all,
Thank
if you look at the budget,
Yeah.
and you look down a few lines from where you saw the blank line,
Yes.
okay, there's a number in there. There's a contingency fee in there,
Yeah.
and it's a percentage, and there's an actual dollar figure in there. So there's a number that is a contingency for us to manage any contingencies, and that being one of those contingencies.
Okay. Yeah, I noticed that the net
Yep.
costs are below what was approved at town meeting, so you certainly gave some bandwidth in there for contingencies.
The
I
reason
understand
being that is
and-
there was only a 3% owner's
Yeah.
contingency,
Yeah.
and that really is not sufficient. And one of the reasons
Yeah.
that number is a little higher is because of that, and also because after the estimate was done, the president was threatening tariffs on steel, which would affect the construction costs greatly.
Yeah.
At that time, it was threatening China, and now he's only doing the Canada and Mexico, or wherever he's doing, which is going to affect the price, and that's
Sure.
one of the reasons why that figure is a little higher.
Yeah.
The point of the thing, and during the construction itself, is going to be phased, so that the architect felt that there may be some swing state. The building committee did not, because of the fact that we will be phasing this project in, so that we would not need to have someone relocated to another building.
Okay, so
Okay.
there's, okay,
Just one
in
quick one.
conclu-
Yeah.
really just in conclusion, I guess let's do a good conclusion statement. Big supporter of the police and fire, and actually have become probably more of one, getting involved in learning so much, to be quite frank and honest. But I am concerned the town is trying to put too much facility space on a very limited footprint. I'm concerned about future expansion. Certainly facilities accommodate everything we know now, but in today's dollars, we're talking nearly $20 million would be put into this facility, and I'm very concerned that that footprint is not going to suffice for both departments over, well, even within my lifetime, nevertheless, future generations. It's a big concern I have. There's lots of other issues I didn't get to speak to tonight, and that's fine. I just would urge people to vote no on this article on June 26th. I think there are better options. I think we have a little bit of time to provide a good facility for the police. I think we can just do better as a community for you guys, quite frankly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have, go ahead.
Good evening, guys. Bob McLaughlin, 376 Water Street. I share a lot of the issues that Bob just stated, but just briefly, on May 7th, there were about 200-plus people voting on Article 8. And by bringing this to the town and letting everybody else vote on it, we have an opportunity to let everybody, weigh in on this. A lot of people I spoke to didn't, they weren't aware of the issues about this project, particularly the cost. We're talking about $8 million of discretionary money that that the townspeople are going to be asked to pay for, and so I think it's a good thing that we're going to have this vote, and I don't see a downside on it. And if it goes, quite frankly, I'm just one vote. If people vote for it, that's fine. If they don't, like I said at town meeting, like on May 7th, is that we can always come back at a future town meeting with another plan. It doesn't have to necessarily have to be this one. Could even be a better plan. One of the things that I said at town meeting also was a lot of the issues that I read in Article 8, particularly the maintenance issues and some of the other stuff, I believe could be that could be dealt with the tax levy capital outlay account. A lot of the other buildings in town, they go for that same account. I think we passed almost $2 million on that in that one article this year at town meeting, and then also just one other couple of quick notes here. The one thing I also said was I wasn't in favor of expanding the footprint of the building, maybe dealing with the issue with the lobby on the second floor, bringing it down to the first floor. The issue that I had, this was the question that I had for you, Joe. Back in '97, they had brought up having civilian dispatchers, and somewhere along the line, from '97 to when actually they moved into the building, that did not materialize, and I think that's where the problem was. When we had a control desk up on the second floor, and nobody on the first floor, and it had something to do with the civilian dispatches, and it never. Do you remember anything about how that happened?
Unfortunately, yes. Yeah, I certainly do. Back in the 1990s, it was the belief in the position of the Board of Selectmen to have civilian dispatchers, which was sort of the phase that everyone was in at that time. And you would have civilian dispatchers and move the dispatch to have it on the second floor so that there would be no disruption whatsoever in what they were doing. You wouldn't have anybody bothering them whatsoever. They'd be totally isolated. And that was the position of Boston, and that's how Boston did it at that time, and that's how we ended up doing it, the same way that Boston did it. And then the hope was that we would be able to get in then civilian dispatchers that would allow then the police officers to be down on the lobby area, because at the time it was designed to have a person there 24/7. There was an office, they called it the officer of the day or whatever, something like that. And that was what was going to occur. But because the civilian dispatch never occurred, never happened, due to negotiations, whatever happened, I was not involved in that. And because of the economy essentially not allowing us to hire more police officers. At the time, we wanted to have 50 police officers, and we built the building and designed it in 1998 for that, so to have 50 officers, and we don't have anywhere near that now. And so that would allow then to have someone there in that lobby. But those two things didn't occur. In the economy, we weren't allowed to. The state started giving us less and less money to the town, which then didn't allow us to hire the extra police officers. That's why we came into the situation where Chief Smith then had to adjust to the situation that he had, where he had to have officers on the street and then create the situation in the lobby the way we have it now. That's the reason that it turned into that way.
So we ended up with basically a lobby. When people went in, there wasn't, or couldn't get in, there wasn't anybody there, and they'd have to bring somebody from the second floor down. And that's been going on for 14 years.
That's been going on for 14 years, but let me back up before I answer that question for you. What I really want to make the point that, and this is this is the reason we're here and we're talking about that, is we're out of space. This is a spatial issue. It's just not one issue. It's not HVAC. It's not heating. It's not leaks on the roof. It's not computers. It's cumulative, and it's space. The bottom line is we do not have the operating space for an agency that serves the public like we do. That's the issue, and we've said that from the beginning, and we'll continue to say that. When we opened this building in February of 2004, the building was too small for the police side. So I want to clarify this, that the police side is a 68-year-old building with some cosmetic repairs to it. The fire side is a brand new building, and it was built eyeing the future. The police side wasn't. We're in the same footprint, and we're in the same footprint that served 23 or 26 officers back in 1950 when it was built. We're at 40, well, we're in the process. We should be at 47. Our goal is eventually, because of the change in policing over the last 20 years, to get to a certain number, and we've talked about that number being 50. We're shoehorned in that building right now. And so when people say, and I think it's misleading when people say the public safety building is only 15 years old, is only 15 years old. That's not true. The truth is, the police side of the building is 68 years old. The fire side is 15 years old. So we're here, Chief Sullivan and I are here as partners because we share a lot of that building. But for us to operate efficiently, effectively, and safely going forward, we have to make adjustments in that building, and they're major adjustments. Now, sir, you mentioned we're going to be into this for $20 million. Not the police side, I can tell you that, okay? The police side will be into it for 8 plus or minus whatever we spent before. The majority of that money back in 2003, 2001, whenever they were building this, went on the fire side and built a brand new building. So we have to be very clear and we have to be very specific about that, because that's why we're here. Now, the point you asked me, you're going to have to repeat it because I forgot it already, so help me out here.
Well,
it's been a long day.
You know, it has been a long day for all of us. No, actually, I guess I'm just going to summarize because we could keep this going for a long time. I'm couple of minutes here. If we went into the Wayback Machine, honestly, I had suggested that we went down to where Mike's gym is, because that was empty at that point, and build a new public safety building down there. This was back in '97 or '96 or something when this whole thing came up. And then double deck that building with the town hall, sell the town hall off, put the parking garage where the police and the firehouse was, and we wouldn't have had to deal with all the 2 years of disruption. Anyway, that's water under the bridge. But quite frankly, I'm in the construction business. I'm an electrician for actually longer than I want to admit. But it is disruptive when you're adding into a building versus building a new building and moving in. And quite frankly, for my money as a taxpayer, I'd rather build a new police station someplace else, to be honest with you, before we plow $8 million into this. I'd rather build another building and look at that and just take a step back and and that's kind of what we're doing tonight is just having an honest discussion.
Sure.
And and again, I said it, the first thing I said at town meeting, the first responders, you guys have been on the top of the list. I've lived in town since 1974, and thank goodness I haven't had to use anybody yet. But
Let's
but
keep it
in any
that way.
event, you guys are doing a great job.
Thank you.
And we'll see how it goes. Okay, thank you very much.
Just on
Yeah,
that
go
point.
ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Bob,
Yes.
you may recall, but in the 1990s, there was a proposal to move the police station to North Ave. There was a vote at a town meeting, and that particular vote got about 22%. And at the same time, there was a vote for a new middle school, and they got about 30%. So I didn't even get 22.
I'd like to
I
follow
know,
up
I've
on
been
what
to a
Joe
few
was
town
saying, though,
meetings.
and what you were saying, sir. Believe me, we would love an off-site, beautiful, standalone facility. It's not going to happen, okay? We're pretty much built out in this town. Real estate is very expensive. We're trying to build the business base in this town. We know it's not going to happen. We've looked at it with the expertise of the town and the building committee. There's not too many sites, and we've decided through a lot of homework and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears over the years that the best option we can present is where we are and to enlarge a facility where we are. It won't impact parking, it won't impact the tax base. It's not going to, we can do this. This feasibility study told us that we can do this on-site as it is now. And hopefully, I always say hopefully because I'm always looking around the corner myself. We can do this and it will serve the department going forward as we need it. We have a very proactive, we have a very smart police department, and we know this. The men and women that work in that police department know what the needs are of 21st century policing. And this was not done in a vacuum. It was done with a lot of work, with a lot of people coming forward. We solicited a lot of input from staff, from outside, from the different boards in town, from the building committee, the fire side. We all talked, we all worked on this. We brought private people in. It was all open. It was an all open session. So we did a lot of work, and we came up with, this is what the plan came up with. We've spent, by the time of the election is over, this town will have spent over $116,000 to get us sitting in the studio tonight. That's a fact.
Well, that's
And the study, out of it came a study, and that's what we were looking for. That is not, what you see up there is not final. That is a study. We asked for a feasibility study, and that's what we got for $100,000 plus 16 for the election. So we're confident, and we're in this business. We're in the business of public safety, and we're confident that what we're going to have at the end of the day is going to serve not only men and women that work in that building, but the people like you who haven't had the luxury of calling us. So, and that's our goal. That's our goal is customer service.
Well, for $8 million, I'll spend $100,000 to do a study before I spend $8 million any day of the week, something. So that's money well spent. But we'll see where it goes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, on your first point, Bob, on letting the people decide this, admirable idea. The only problem is that most of the voters weren't at town meeting to hear the full presentation, which was 3 hours long. So let me suggest to everyone out there who's watching that WCAT's website still has The forum program that I did with the two chiefs in April that talks about the project in detail, how we got to where we are, why community policing has changed in the last 20 years, and why it's necessary to have the additional spaces that they need now. Also, there is the May 7th town meeting, which is up there. These are both in the video archives page on the website. The website is wcatwakefield.org. And the Article 8 discussion begins at about 14 minutes and 35 seconds in. So anyone who hasn't seen these two programs, I do highly recommend that you take the time before June 26th to take a look at this and see all of the discussion that has gone into this particular project before you go down to the Galvin to vote.
And you should be educated before you vote. You should know
Yep.
exactly what you're looking at,
Yep.
and I totally understand that.
And this is one project we've covered a lot. We've done two programs leading up to town meeting on just this one project. There was one town administrator's report and then the special program too. So the information has been out there for a long time for people to take advantage of. And it didn't sound like a whole lot had by the time we went to town meeting. Hopefully that'll be different this time around.
And also point out that when the Permanent Building Committee authorized and hired the architects to perform the feasibility study, one of the issues was whether we could meet the needs not only of the present police station, but the future police station on that site. And that's what they concluded that we could. And that report, which is, you know, a short 400 pages, is on the town website, but there's an executive summary of only of about 40. And if people want to take a look at that, I would suggest they do that as well if they want to be even more informed about it. But the entire actual study, including the minutes of all of our meetings, the diagrams and everything are on the town website.
Well, I want to thank the Permanent Building Committee. Is that the name of your committee, Permanent Building?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, well, anyway, I want to thank you guys for all the work you've done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else who'd like to speak?
Hi, gentlemen. My name is Pat Bruno, 2 Mackenzie Lane. How's everybody this evening? I know the chief. I know Chief Sullivan as well. Obviously, I know David and Joe Bertrand as well. Tonight, having the forum is just a great idea. Possibly, it would have been a better idea if the forum occurred before the vote at the town meeting, similar to some of the other forums that have been conducted.
Well, that's why we did the special program that was on
Thanks.
regular repeat several times a week in the weeks leading up to town meeting.
Right. Well, customarily, though, it's advertising that gets people to come out to buy the product, and it's advertising that gets people to perhaps participate in town government. But having said all that, this evening is a great event. I know that there was just Officers Pelletier and Officer Powers had something occur in the square just recently where they were able to diffuse a situation that could have been a lot worse, where there was a gentleman who had a BB gun and some knives. And obviously, from talking to Chief Smith and even before the town meeting, all of the policing has changed over the last 20 years. And it's become more of a societal matter than it has become, obviously, the old policing matter. A lot of the folks that used to be hospitalized and in facilities now are in our community. And they're obviously roaming the community, coming in on buses, but they're part of the community. And what we have is something that most communities do have to deal with on a daily basis. Having said that, I realized that at the town meeting, a lot of it was considered societal as well. When they were talking about domestic disputes, they were talking about cases where somebody has to hand over their children to a divorced parent. And there's not enough room in the community, in the police station today to handle some of those, those situations that occur. And they're occurring more and more. And I've been in the police station several times at different forums as well. I've seen Chief Smith at opioid addiction forums. I've heard him talk about human trafficking. I've heard him talk about the community and the eclectic members of the community who are in the downtown. Unfortunately, a lot of the space, it sounds like, and I'm not the expert, but it sounds like a lot of the space revolves around taking care of these particular societal problems. And maybe I have an answer to that. However, I have a question.
Okay, you're coming up on your 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you. Could you just address, you fellas can take a peek at that. And this is obviously something everybody should look at. And my question is specifically, the article that I just handed out, it was appeared in the October 2017 Wakefield item, and it specifically talks about accreditation for the police department. And obviously, there's always some sort of shortfall when you come up against peer review in any particular field, any profession. But the article specifically says that we were, or the police department was accredited for the 3rd time since 2011. How does that accreditation come to be?
Through a lot of work, a lot of work. Accreditation, certification is a standard. It's a statewide standard. In some arenas, it's a national standard. In Massachusetts, we have statewide certification or accreditation. A lot of it has to do with, the majority has to do with your operating procedures, your policies and procedures, how you manage your evidence, how you respond to calls. Pretty much everything on the operational side is analyzed. At the same time, they look at our evidence, how we handle evidence, how we dispatch calls, our staffing levels, how we deal with crises, the opioid crises, stuff like that. So to get to this standard of excellence, it takes a lot of work and a lot of assistance from not only the command staff, the community, but from the men and women that work in there. So it's not an easy task. There's 100, the deputy can probably give you the number because he worked on it. He was our accreditation manager, but there's hundreds of standards that we have to meet to achieve certification or accreditation.
And do they recommend anything about the particular building, the facilities? Do they do any sort of checklist on the facilities? And
They do.
recommend?
They-
And how did we fare in that particular instance?
It's, what it is they talk about how we use certain spaces. For instance, how the cell blocks are managed, how we manage evidence, how do we audit our evidence, how do we transport our evidence. And we fit the bill there. Accreditation certification has nothing to do with spatial needs. It's a nice, I'm trying to figure out how to say this. It's policy driven, okay? And we comply with those policies. We've met that level that they expect us to be at to achieve that level. But it has nothing to do with spatial. So because we don't have a dispatch area on the first floor, has nothing to do with accreditation or certification. Because we have a room to interview a sexual assault victim, that has nothing to do with certification accreditation. The fact that the room that we do it in is a former closet has nothing to do with certification. It's how we do it.
I understand.
And how do we get to the end game? So that isn't even, this article right here has nothing to do with our building.
So it's truly a spatial issue. So if there was a facility that's owned by the community, but that's owned by the town of Wakefield, that could give you a certain amount of space, you're going to build 4,100 square feet, if I remember correctly. That's usable space by the police officers, not including what's going to happen with the garage or the Sally Port or whatever you call it, where you bring in the paddy wagon. But how much space is the 4,100 for future growth, or does that 4,100 really max out at this particular moment in 2018?
The facility that we're in right now is completely maxed out.
Okay.
It was maxed out 14 years ago.
So the 4,100 is definitely spatially wise, you need the 4,100. But if there was something within a block where you could use, say, another 3,000 square feet, would that provide the opportunity to do some of the societal in some of the office work that you have to do on a daily basis? Because I know you mentioned not a sergeant in the force has his own office.
That's true.
And no, and I remember you saying that specifically. And obviously, sergeants are the ones, you know, like many places, sergeants are the ones where the work goes down to the sergeant, and a lot of the sergeants take it upon themselves to take care of some of the dirty work that has to be done at the police station.
As,
So-
as a practitioner of 41 years in this business,
Sure.
I can tell you in the last 20 that I've served as chief, I have seen an incredible transition from the off-site state of mind and to decentralize and bring everything back. It does not work. It's not effective. It's difficult to manage. It's difficult to budget. It's difficult to supervise. Not only that, it does not solve the problem. And what by that plan, quite honestly, it's putting a Band-Aid on the problem. Our goal is to address the problem once and for all and fix it so that we can continue serving in the way that we serve the community. If you were to put an investigative group off-site, I can tell you it happened in Wilmington. I experienced it. It does not work.
Right.
It fails miserably. And at the end of the day, you're taking good money after bad and throwing it out there. You increase liability, you increase maintenance costs, and again, management, leadership, guidance, policies and procedures fails miserably. It sets the police department back, and this department is not going backwards, sir. It's
No,
going
and
forward.
I don't think you should. But is there any opportunity to perhaps off-site conduct societal interviews? Is there any opportunity to conduct office administrative duties? And I know you only have one administrative assistant for the whole force, 47 people. But is there an opportunity to?
This has to be your last question,
Okay,
okay?
it certainly is.
I thought I explained it. I thought I just answered that question
Oh,
for you.
no, but you were talking about investigative.
Same thing.
And-
It doesn't
okay.
matter. When you're putting personnel off-site, you're putting victims off-site, you're putting witnesses off-site, it does not work. I can tell you for a fact, it does not work. It's very difficult to manage. And you have to bear in mind, we're not a major city where we have bureaus and we have a heavy command staff. We're bare bones, okay? And although we're numbers right now are 47, we're bare bones. We barely have enough supervisors to cover the patrol functions that we have to do. We barely have enough to cover detectives. We have vacations, we have injuries. It is a manager's nightmare. So to have us decentralized, which is the model in this country today and has been going back to that model over the years, decentralization is the only way to effectively and efficiently operate in a police department.
Yeah. And I'll just finish right this minute. Thank you, David.
Thank
And-
you.
And you know, one just quickly is, you know, I appeared before the planning board 2 years ago, and I had mentioned to the planning board that the Cafe Molise property was available for sale, and I was, you know, turned down with an eminent domain discussion. It was a good discussion. However, and now obviously the Boys and Girls Club will buy that property, apparently, which is terrific. But there has to be property available. And in finishing, you know, I really believe that, you know, 2 years ago, Lieutenant Scurry was looking for 10 additional parking spaces behind the dollar store. And he tabled that one night for the selectmen. Rather than discuss it, he tabled it. However, I know a lot of visitors come to this particular police station, and they come from other police stations as well, just like visitors to Town Hall. So my thought is there has to be some property available to probably build a new facility. And that's my final thought is perhaps there is a property that we're just not overlooking. And I just don't have the expertise at the time, but it seems like, you know, there's got to be something available. There's plenty of developers who find properties in Wakefield, and that's probably who you're competing with today.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Can
David.
I just,
He-
one thing?
Yeah, and then I'm going to bring up a point. Go ahead.
Thank you.
I misspoke when I said decentralize. I meant centralize, to bring it back into the central.
what you meant.
Okay? That is a-
No, I
I'm
understood.
thinking
I understood
Mike and
what
I
you
were
meant.
ready to correct
Yeah,
you, but
okay, so I want to make that perfectly clear that we're talking about centralization.
Yes.
I don't want
And that's
to
what
be
I'm talking about. I
misquoted
thought
tomorrow.
a newer facility, and you know, architecturally, and I know a little bit about architecture, I knew a little bit about engineering, just enough to know that I don't know enough. but, you know, it's obviously something where you try to do something and accomplish a particular goal with space that's still a 1951 building with a 4,100 square foot addition and an increase to the
Okay,
garage.
at this point, I
But
have to-
perhaps another location would be a better idea.
At this point, I have to open it up to other voices too, but.
Thank you, David.
Before we get to that, one of the things that Pat brought up was the Sallyport, which we've talked about on the other shows too. And that was something that didn't exist before this incarnation of the building. Let's talk a little bit about the Sallyport, what it's for and why it's inadequate.
The Sallyport is basically to transfer prisoners from the street into the prisoner processing area of the police department. It is built to be a secure area, and the other side of the Sallyport is to bring vehicles in or large items to also to process for evidence or whatever has to be done. For instance, if you have a burned car, we'll bring it in there and we'll process it. If you have a car that was used in a major crime that has to be processed for fingerprints or blood or whatever, we'll bring it in there. It's secure. So it allows us to keep our evidence secure. Let's get back to the prisoner piece. As it stands now, the way that Sallyport is constructed, it, like everything else on the police side of that building, is too small. We can barely get a cruiser in there, and once the cruiser's in there, the officers have a hard time getting the prisoner from the car out and then transfer it safely and securely into the building to be processed. What that does is, right now, it creates more of a hazard than it solves. It was just built undersized. There's 2 poles in there that were put in there when they added to the building, when they reconstructed the building or whatever they did in 2013, that are in the way. So we have to enlarge that. Quite frankly, prisoners really aren't in a really good frame of mind when they come in there, and sometimes it gets a little testy in that room, and the way it's laid out now when we pull into that garage, it's very dangerous for our officers because, you know, we have certain protocols, certification protocols that we have to follow, and we have rules and regulations that we have to follow when we go in there. And it becomes very difficult when you're trying to squeeze through a really narrow area with somebody who doesn't want to go through it. So by adding on to it, it gives us the room that we need so that we can get in and we can get around the cars, get the prisoners out, open the doors in a safe manner. We can't open the doors. Sometimes we can't open the doors in that Sallyport to get the cars out. Sometimes we have to get the prisoners out. Sometimes we have to leave the door open, which defeats the whole purpose. The way it is built and the way it's designed to work is that door comes down and we can't open it from the inside. We have to open it now sometimes to get prisoners, to transfer prisoners.
Okay, but taking it one step further, this building, as it is now, was designed in the era of Crown Vic police cars, which don't exist anymore. We're now in SUVs. Is that a factor in this size problem?
No. The cars are the cars. They're the same size.
Okay.
The bottom line is they're the same size.
So it was too small from the beginning.
It was too small from the beginning. It wasn't wide enough. It wasn't long enough. So we're going to have an opportunity to lengthen it, which will give us some relief in how we handle and how we transfer and how we process prisoners. Now, if we go on the other side, the processing side, it gives us more room to be able to process those vehicles, get in there, get the crime lab in there to do what we have to do to get the evidence that we need out of there. As it is now, if we have a car that's in there, many times, you know, we have to apply for an affidavit, we have to file an affidavit for a search warrant. That could take a long period of time depending on what we're looking for. And that car's not in there for 10 minutes. It could be in there for a week, it could be in there for a month. So we're basically handcuffed right now inside of that facility.
Okay,
All right, thank you, gentlemen.
beautiful, thank you.
Just a quick comment. The suggestion's been made several times that the town could perhaps build a facility on another site. And it was also, the statement was also made that, you know, land is being scooped up rapidly, and most of the good sites that are left, if you will, are privately owned.
Right.
I just thought it was worth mentioning that the town would have to purchase the property you know, before they could even think about building a facility on it, if we were going to look at an alternate site.
Right.
Just seems that,
And if you look at what properties are going for in Wakefield right now, and particularly in Greenwood where I live, it's not an inexpensive proposition. You know, the work that's been done so far, plus the work that's being proposed, would be a small amount compared to what a new building would cost.
I've talked to a number of my colleagues around the state, and who have used different architects, who have used different builders, some on the south coast, some up in the northern part of the state, out west, and right here in Metro Boston. And a facility to service an agency of our size that services a community of our density easily can run $25 to $30 million after land acquisition. You have to buy the property. If you're going to build it, and you're going to build it right, the square footage that we would need, it would be a phenomenal amount of money. And we know from the study that we have done and working with everybody that the best way for this town to go, and we firmly believe this, is that we finally rehab the police side of the public safety building. And we know now, after completing the study, that we can do that for $8 million. And I think it's, I'm confident that this is what, how it should go.
Well, and the other thought is also, one advantage that the current public safety building has is that it's fronted and backed on 2 streets. Whereas if you built at the Mike's Gym or the old Stop and Shop property, that's basically enclosed on 3 sides. How does that affect the design of say, a public safety building in that case?
I'm not an architect, but I can tell you that
From
you know,
an
there's-
operational
from
point
an
of view.
operational standard, you know, you make it work. You design a building to work around those in construction know you design a building to work around the site that you have. But what we know now is we have a product on the street. We know what we have now. We know what we need, and we know we have a piece of property that could make it work. Who says that the Mike's Gym area is up for sale? How do we know that? We don't know that. And I have to tell you, after doing all this work, and I think, Joe, you'll jump in on this, in today's market, in today's public safety building construction market, every 6 months that you stand down and you do not move forward and you do not build is a 4% increase in the cost of the building with labor, materials. We don't know what's going to happen with steel, but so in the course of a year, you have an 8% increase on the cost of that building.
That's actually reflected in the feasibility study that was done, that if you continue to wait, you're talking at least, in the Boston area, at least an 8% increase in cost of construction. So if you wait.
So $8 million plus for whatever
Add another
delays
8%,
occur.
add another 8%.
Yeah.
Yep. If you keep going, there eventually has to come a time when you need to solve it. And I think that the solution that the architects and the police department and the fire department and the building committee looked at for a long period of time, studied it, looked at various options that were presented. I mean, at one time there were, I think, one meeting we had 5 huge boards looking at various different ones, and everybody was looking at to see which one works the best, and as to move the dispatch here, or to move the records here, or to move or to take away the community room, to do all kinds of various options were looked at throughout the entire process that we've done, and we thought, after reviewing all of those and looking at all of those, that the solution that we think fits the best needs of the police department, and the police agree, and the fire department, was the one that we've come up here with this study. And as I said, it's a feasibility study. It may change when the design is actually done, but that's taken into account because with the cost estimator that came in and did the estimation of the cost, we know generally how much has to be done. Whether it's changed here, a little bit here, and a little bit there, that may turn out to be so. But we know how much work has to be done and how much that work will cost. And it's $8 million. And if it waits another 2 years, it's 16% more on that.
So 8 million plus 16.
Yeah,
Well-
I don't do math, so I have no idea.
That's all right. We can dig up a
There
calculator
you
somewhere
go.
if we need it.
I think the building that we're in now is unique because you can use the front and back of the building
Right.
as much as you can. Plus the change in elevation. I mean, you have a 4-bay fire station basically in the the same building as a police station on a footprint that probably wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for the lay of the land, if you will, the way
Right.
it is.
Well, and talking about the building as it exists now, a lot of the public doesn't know this. We do because we've been involved in it, but we have found creative ways of adding capabilities to what the town does in that building. The community room is also now the Emergency Operations Center, which didn't exist when that building was built. And that was all done over a period of
No,
5
it was
years.
built to be that in
But
2004.
it's actually been outfitted and everything over the course of 5 years, thanks to state grants and everything else, at no cost to the town at all. And now every department can get in there in an emergency and handle it efficiently, effectively, to the benefit of the townspeople.
I think that's I think that's a testimony to the creativity of the people that have an interest in public safety. And we knew what we had there, and we know what we
Yes.
needed, and we know what we need going forward. We know what the world calls for. I mean, Chief Sullivan and I talk every day about where we're going, where this public safety business is going, and I think that the success we've had in that room has been because we received the support of the town. We received the support of I want to get this right, town council. Okay, I'm doing
We
better.
have to be careful,
I'm
there
doing
are a
better.
couple in the audience, so.
But we've also received, the support of the community, and I think that speaks volumes of the understanding of where we want to be. This project is no different.
Absolutely, absolutely. Do we have anyone else who'd like to ask a question or make a comment? Please.
Peter McManama, 4 June Circle, and I've been on the Finance Committee for, I think, 7 years. And I want to just bring it back a little bit to the whole budget review process, and I would want to ask everyone to be mindful that there is a well-established, respected process in place as far as developing, and reviewing, and vetting the expenditures, the budgets that the department heads, such as Chief Smith and Chief Sullivan, prepare. They prepare their budget. They go in front of the town accountant, Kevin Gill, the town administrator, Steve Mayo, and then they go in front of the town council, our respected elected officials, and the budgets are reviewed, again, in this case, for this expenditure. And then they go on and they're reviewed by the Finance Committee. Finance Committee members are appointed committee members, and we have a really good, really strong Finance Committee, as well as we do as town council. Hardworking, well-respected, and in the Finance Committee, I know in the Town Council, we vet the budgets, we ask a lot of good questions, we spend a lot of hours up there. Steve knows, he can attest to it, that, that we're pushing back. So you've got a process in place here that has worked and has been in place for this past year, and these expenses, like every other budget, has been vetted and reviewed. The same process is in place that allows us to be here today to discuss this. But I'm just asking everyone to be mindful that the process is in place, and that a lot of hardworking, qualified people have, with high level of expertise, have reviewed this and opined on it and are comfortable with it. And we also have potentially dueling priorities. We'd love to have, a new high school, state-of-the-art high school. We'd love to have a new public works facility for Rick Stinson. And so there's a number of factors in play, but I just would ask that everyone be mindful that this has all been reviewed and vetted by a lot of hardworking, dedicated people, many of them volunteers, and many of them elected officials. So,
But you raise a wonderful point, but the other side of that point that didn't seem to come up is all of this is done in the public sphere. The public can attend these meetings, the public can ask questions in some cases, but it is all done in the public sphere, and the final step of the whole process is open town meeting. We're one of the few towns that still has absolutely open town meeting, where everybody and anybody who is on the rolls as a voter can come down, have their say, and have their vote.
right. And in this case, just to carry it a step further, this has gone through the entire process, the review, the expense was proposed, it was approved by the town council, it was approved by FinCom, it went to town meeting, and it was approved by a representative sample of the community. 209 people voted, and 168 voted for it, and then 41, I believe, voted against it. So again, it just leads me to believe that a well-respected, established process has followed suit.
Well, and also, that vote required a 2/3. And the vote as counted was actually 4-1
Right.
in favor.
I would also like to point out that, for the people that may not know it, that this is not going to affect their tax rate, because this is going to be done through the debt service fund, in which we have all of our building projects. We don't have a library anymore, but we still have the senior center. We have the Woodville School. We have part of the Galvin in there. We have the actual public safety that's coming up. And some of these are going to be coming off of the the debt service fund, which, if I may, on an aside, was helped and was created through the efforts of Phil McCarty, member of the Finance Committee, former member of the School Committee, and a grand gentleman in of itself, who passed away yesterday. And he will be sorely missed, not only by members of the FinCom, but by the entire town.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else who'd like to speak, ask a question? We have some town councilors. I did get it right. Some town councilors. Want to say anything?
No.
Go ahead.
call me. I wouldn't have worn my jeans. My only statement is, and I made a similar one.
Okay, if you would just, for
Town.
those who are new to the
Yes,
town.
I'm sorry. Ann McGonigal Santos, 39 Converse Street. I'm also a member of the town council. As I said at town meeting, I worked at the old police station when I was a assistant district attorney, and I use that lens probably more than my town council lens when I've looked at the police department and think about what we need. And I think $8 million is not a lot of money to really get the police what they need to serve our citizens well. For my purposes, prosecuting domestic violence cases, child sexual assault cases, to not have a very comfortable room to work with those victims is a shame in today's day and age when we have such an exemplary police department and an outstanding police department. So to give them the tools to better work with our citizens, I think this project was well vetted, and I echo what was just said. Not many people might have come to our meetings, but we had the meetings. We had things on WCAT. Town meeting wasn't filled with 2,000 people, but it never is. And the people that were there were engaged, and this vote passed by 4-1. And I'm hoping that when people go to the polls on the 26th, it will do the same thing, because we owe the police departments, but more importantly, we owe, I think, our most fragile citizens in times of crisis. We owe them to have to be taken care of in the best way that we can for not a lot of money. And I understand people say we should, we should go to a new building, we should build something. If we came to the town asking for $30 million, my concern is a similar group of people would be arguing against that. So I think for $8 million, we can do this right. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to have an opportunity to speak? We have the deputy chief here. Come on up.
Craig Calabrese. Spend most of my time at 1 Union Street in Wakefield. I just want to say, I think that I attend a town meeting, I feel like we have always had the support of the citizens in Wakefield, the town council, town administrator, and I think we felt that at town meeting. They saw what we needed. We're not here just trying to push for something that we don't need. It's something that we've talked about. I've been at the police station for 19 years. When we moved in, I really felt that it was too small. I was, hadn't been on too long at that time, but I could just tell from walking around that I didn't think it was something that was, certainly wasn't as big as I thought it was going to be when I walked in. And we've made it work. The men and women of the police department work really hard. If this gets voted down, we're still going to provide the same services that we have before. So I just think that we can do it better with a newer facility that just kind of brings everything together and meets the needs. And I would just say that, to echo what Chief Smith said, we would love a new police station, but I think we realize what that cost would be. And I don't know that the appetite for it would be out there. I don't know that there's ever a perfect plan. And I'm just afraid that if this plan, which I feel is a very, very, very good plan, if we try to wait for a better one, we're just kind of pushing it out, and then we'll be here a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. I think I kind of look at it the same as the parking issues downtown. I know there was a lot of debate over the parking garage when it was up, and I'm not going to chime in on that. I just think that if you look at where we are today, we still have a parking problem downtown. I work about 20 feet from downtown, and that problem is still there. And look, we're, I don't know how many years, 2, 3 years from when that happened. So I feel like if the town waits on this for something better, I think we could just kind of be in the same boat, a few years down the road. But we appreciate what the support that we get. We're going to move forward either way. But I appreciate the opportunity to at least be heard, and thank you for your time.
Anyone else like to speak before we go ahead? Last one.
Good evening. I'm Ed Dombrowski, 15 Chestnut Street. I'm on the town council as well. I think this is a question of viable options, and I've heard unanimous support for the police and the great work that the police and all of our first responders do. But now we have choices to make, and we have ideal resolutions, and then we have practical resolutions. And I think in this case, we need to look at what the viable options are here. What are we presented with? We're not presented with the option of 18 acres to build a state-of-the-art facility, like I'm sure the chiefs would like to have at a low cost. That's not an option for us. And so our question is, do we go forward? We know that there are deficiencies. There are significant deficiencies within our current facility. Those compromise the quality of the force. They compromise the quality of the support that our community has. And so I think we have to ask ourselves, in light of that, what can we as a community do to try to support the efforts of our first responders, but also ensure our own safety? And when it comes down to it, we're looking at this project. It may not be ideal, but no project will ever be ideal. No project will ever be the project. But we have to act. And I think it's imperative that we do act, and we act in the interest of public safety. We act in the interest of our community. And our police force needs to be able to do its job. The men and women that go to that building every day, they need the facilities to be able to do the work that they can do. If we think about any of us in our own work environments, if we didn't have the space or the the areas that are necessary to be able to execute and do the work we have to do every day. How do we do it? And we're really compromising the integrity of our policing, and we're compromising a lot of opportunities here for our residents by not acting on this. And I understand mistakes were made in the past. As I said at town meeting, those mistakes will not be repeated. We have a very thoughtful process that's gone into this project. The feasibility study, again, 400 pages for those interested in reading it. That matters because those sorts of things 10 years ago weren't being done in this town. They are being done now. I echo a lot of the comments that have been made. There are a lot of folks here who know what they're talking about, who have put a lot of time and effort and expertise into analyzing the situation. This is the best solution that they've come up with. And I think as a town, it's important that we support it. Because if we don't, then I think we're really doing ourselves a disservice. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. I think we've come up on our hour. I would urge everyone who's watching this program, and this program will be repeated on a regular schedule through June 25th, the day before the election. Please take the opportunity to learn as much as you can about this issue. The resources are there on the WCAT Wakefield.org website. Feel free to reach out to your town councilors, to the town administrator, Steve Mayo, and to the chiefs. But please, June 26th, come informed and vote your conscience. Thank you very much, and good night.